Today's video is a continuation of my top 50 favorite board games of all time, with games number 40 up to 31. Here we go. As always, if you enjoy the content you see here on the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps us out a lot. Leave comments below with some of your favorite board games of all time. And without further ado, let's get into my number 40 favorite game of all time. My number 40 was number 34 on the list last year, and it is one of many Stefan Feld games that are up and coming here on the list. Again, just falling because I haven't gotten it to the table in quite some time. But still, holding strong in my top 50 games of all time, Amerigo is awesome. It has a lot of different things going on. It is a Euro game, but what I enjoy most about it is just the plethora of actions and the different action selections you can do in this game, and it's all represented from a cube tower. I like the idea and the mechanism of a cube tower. You don't see it in a lot of games. Amerigo does this one very nicely, where each time you're doing an action, you are dropping cubes into the cube tower, and depending on what cubes come out the bottom, will tell you what actions you can do. There are a lot of things going on, like I said, in Amerigo, but at the heart of it, you are exploring around to these different islands. You're trying to develop buildings and tiles on the islands to score victory points. The mechanism of the cube tower paired with tile placement is a fun puzzle every time I play it. It's pretty much trying to exploit your actions the best you can. Like I said, the actions are dictated by the cubes that are placed into the tower, and cubes can also get stuck in the tower as they are heading their way down, so you never know how many of which type of cube is going to come out of the bottom. So it's very fun, not only strategy, but also your tactical decisions that you're making in this game. So for example, if you had, let's say, red, white, and yellow cubes that came out the bottom, let's say there was 1 white, 2 yellow, and 5 red, that'll tell you that you can either do a yellow, white, or red action up to 5 times, because the red cubes had 5, which were the most amount of any one color to come out the bottom. So you get to do those 5 actions with any one of those 3 colors. So it's really cool how that works. And then on the next player's turn, they are grabbing some cubes and putting them into the cube tower. Again, some of the cubes getting stuck, and some of the other cubes might get jostled loose and spit out the bottom. And then you have to decide what you're going to do with those new actions that are coming out of the bottom of the tower. So you are buying tiles to your play area. You are then spending different action points to actually place the tiles on these different islands. You are using other actions to move your boat around the water to get to different islands. And you're trying to get to certain locations before your opponents can, to place down your tile and kind of spread out from there. There are also resources that you can grab, and depending on the amount of resources you get, and also there's, another action that'll actually give you points for the amount of said resources. So it's really fun to try to hurry up, collect those resources, try to get points for them, and then also place tiles onto the different islands around the board. So Amerigo doesn't overstay its welcome. It plays in a pretty good timeline. It says 90 minutes here, so that is about correct. About an hour and a half of gameplay, and it packs in a lot of strategy and tactical decision making within that short period of time. So Amerigo, really enjoy this one and highly recommend it. Okay, my number 39 favorite board game of all time was number 50 last year. So this one is actually having the opposite effect of I have been getting this game to the table more recently, which is probably the reason it has been climbing, and that is Star Realms. Star Realms, it is pretty much like a basic deck building game. It's head-to-head, 1 versus 1. You are trying to play cards to attack your opponent, to take their health points from 50 down to 0. The first player to get their opponent down to 0 life will win the game. But what I really enjoy with Star Realms, it not only plays quickly, but there is a ton of comboing going on, because you can purchase factions of cards that gel well and combo well with cards of that same faction. So for example, if I'm playing a red card down and I have another red card to pair with it, there are actions on those cards that only trigger if you are pairing it with another card of the same color faction. So it's really cool how you are purchasing cards to build your deck better and better throughout the game and to combo with other cards in your deck. The buy row is completely random. There's random cards that are flipped up in the buy row. So as soon as they're flipped up, you want to race to specific cards to purchase those before your opponents can get their hands on them. Your opponents might be purchasing cards to their deck that they know will help you, just so you don't have the opportunity to use that card. So that's a part of the strategy as well. Another thing in Star Realms that I really enjoy a lot is that there are cards that are, instead of the vertical orientation, they are horizontal, and those are bases, are outposts, and those add a lot of flavor into the game as well. Basically what those are doing is that bases stay down in front of you as you are playing the game until they are destroyed. And when they're destroyed, they're put into your discard pile. But as long as they remain in play and your opponent is not choosing to destroy those bases, those are giving you persistent effects and abilities each and every turn. And then also there's outpost cards, which are just like bases, but they have a black shield on them instead of a white shield. And the black shield signifies that your opponent must work their way through that outpost and destroy that outpost before they can even deal any damage to you directly. So that's a lot of fun to slow down your opponent with those cards as well. Star Realms, been playing this game a ton over the last 10 years, 10 plus years, or whenever it came out. It's been many years now where I started playing it with the physical cards. I got the app on my phone and played a ton of the app, and now the physical card game itself is re-emerging as I'm introducing this game to new players. So a ton of fun if you enjoy deck building, if you enjoy head-to-head strategy, kind of like Magic the Gathering or Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Pokemon or any other collectible card games, but you don't like falling into that trap of having to buy and purchase new cards and it becoming very expensive to have a competitive deck in a tournament scene, then Star Realms is a nice substitute for that because it is a self-contained card game all in one package. So that is Star Realms. All right, my number 38 game was number 30 last year, so staying strong in the 30s of my top 50 favorite board games of all time, and I don't think this game will be leaving the top 50 anytime soon. It's another older game and one that that sees the table, I guess, enough for me to keep it on my list and to keep it fresh in my mind, and that game is Coal Baron. Coal Baron, this is the first edition of the game. It is the older version. They did reprint into a second edition, so the cover looks a little bit different, but the gameplay remains the same. And this is a fun worker placement game where each player has, I think, like 20 workers that they're sending out to different locations on the board. But what makes Coal Baron really unique is that you are trying to fulfill different contracts. And by doing that, you are sending your workers down into the coal mines to gather different types of coal and sending them back up the elevator to take them out and transport them by various means of transportation to try to fulfill these contracts. And thematically, the different types of coal that are on the contracts that you're transporting out are signifying the types of coal that people are wanting to purchase from you, and then in turn you are getting points for that coal that you are transporting out and sending them out to the customers. And whichever player is left with the most points at the end of the game is the winner. There are a couple really cool things with Coal Baron that I wanted to touch on that make this game really unique. Like I said in the beginning here, you are starting with 20 workers every turn. Each time you place a worker out on a location, you can do an action. But what makes that unique is that now that I've gone to that location with a worker, if my opponent wants to go there on their turn, they have to spend one more worker than the amount of workers that are already on that location. So if I send a worker out, my opponent wants to do that action, they have to send 2 workers to that location to do that same action. And then eventually when it gets back to my turn around the table, then if there are 2 workers on that location, if I want to take that action again, I have to send 3 of my workers to that spot just to do that one action. So the 20 workers, the limited workers, really dwindle down in a hurry and you are spending them very quickly, but that is a unique mechanism that I really enjoy with Coal Baron. The other really fun mechanism that I enjoy playing around with in Coal Baron, and I'll show you a screenshot of that here on the screen now, is the elevator action. You can take different actions. Each step of the elevator going down into the coal mine costs an action point to go down further, and then it also takes an action to send the elevator all the way back up to the top. So it's really fun trying to build out your different mine carts to collect the coal, but then also utilize the elevator action to try to send your people down into the mines to collect that and then send it back up. like I said, using different modes of transportation, whether it be by train or by truck, or different modes that your customers require you use to send those materials. That's another fun element to this game. So Coal Baron, highly recommend it. Still, after all these years, is a very unique worker placement style game. Okay, and my number 37 game is brand new to the list. It is one of the 8 new games that made its way into the top 50, and this is actually a brand new game to me, and going to be the smallest box game, I guarantee it, on this list, and that is Sea Salt and Paper. Sea Salt and Paper, I've been having a ton of fun with it. It plays well at all player counts. Really have a ton of fun playing it 2-player. I've played it 3 and 4-player as well. But Sea Salt and Paper is a very simple set collection style game. On your turn, you're either collecting 1 card out of any of the 2 discard piles to your hand, or you're drawing 2 cards blindly off the top of the deck, choosing 1 to keep and discarding the other card. And then also you have an option to play cards out of your hand for points. And what's really fun is that you are trying to, like I said, set collect different types of cards. When you can pair up a type of card into a set of 2 and play it down in front of you, that'll also give you a special action, whether it be immediately drawing an additional card off the top of the deck to your hand or stealing a card from one of your opponents. And you're really trying to build out your hand to combo with those pairs of cards so you can continue doing more and more actions and comboing with the cards that you're drawing into your hand. Another really cool thing about Sea Salt and Paper that I really enjoy, and that is a fun twist to the whole standard set collection card style game, is that it isn't played in a set number of rounds. Each round you are doing what I said, collecting the cards and playing them down, and you're trying to get up to a minimum of 7 points. 7 points out of the cards you've played and or the cards that are currently in your hand. And as soon as you get up to that minimum of 7, on your turn, you have the option of ending that round immediately. If you think you have the most points in front of you, you can end the round immediately, and then you count up the scores from all the opponents around the table, and you hopefully have the most amount of points for that round, and then you keep playing rounds until somebody, like in a 2-player game, gets up to 40 points, and that'll signify that that is the last round of the game, and whoever's left with the most points after that last round is the winner. Another cool thing you can do too when you get up to that minimum of 7 points in a round is that you can not only say, I am calling for the end of the round, but I'm also calling for last chance, which is giving your opponents one more final turn for that round, and if they still can't get enough victory points to be higher than you for that round, they only get to score up the most of any one color in their hand. They don't get to score any of the other victory points that have been triggered by the other effects on the cards that they've played throughout that round. So you're really kind of pushing your luck with that as well. So if you like light, fast-playing, set collection card games that has a unique twist on kind of pushing your luck at the end of every round to try to get the most points, it's a lot of fun. Like I said, in a 2-player game, you play up to 40 points, 3-player game up to 35. In a 4-player game, you play up to 30 points, and as soon as that threshold is met, that will signify the last round of the game. So that is Sea Salt and Paper. All right, my number 36 game was number 21 on the list last year. Still staying strong though, in the 30s, still a good spot. And this is another worker placement game. I really do like my worker placement games, but it's another game that is not just standard worker placement. It has a twist to the game with its mechanisms that makes it a lot of fun. And this game is Raiders of the North Sea. In this game, like I said, it's worker placement. You're trying to get the most amount of points to win the game, like in any other worker placement game. But what makes Raiders of the North Sea really unique is that on your turn, you get 2 actions. You are sending 1 worker to the board to do an action, but then your second action must be you pulling off one of your other workers from the board at a different location. You get to do the action from the location you placed a worker at, and you also get to do the action from the worker that you're pulling off of the board. The other thing that is really fun with that is your opponents, when they're placing their workers on the board, you can then pull off their workers on a subsequent turn to do actions. So you're really kind of being careful on where you are placing specific types of workers at different locations, because that'll give your opponent the opportunity they'll place their worker, but then the opportunity to pull off one of your workers from the board to do an action that you had just done. So it's fun with that, trying to decide on which locations you think your opponents might really need. So you might not go to those locations, but it's just kind of a fun puzzle all in itself with that. The other thing too is you are sending your Vikings out on raids to pillage different locations on the board to get different resources, and you're also taking down different villages to try to get points for that. And what's also a lot of fun is that there are locations on the board where you are gathering cards, which are crew members that you can put onto your Viking ship. And those crew will help give you strength for your combat when you're going out and pillaging and raiding different villages, and also give you special effects and special abilities as long as those Vikings are on your ship and a part of your crew. But they can get injured and they can die and fall off of your crew as well. So you are trying to gather crew members that'll combo well with each other and give you various actions throughout the game, and then trying to protect them so they don't get injured and lose them off of your ship. So that is what makes Raiders of the North Sea so much fun. All right, my number 35 game is another game that's brand new to the list, and I can't quite remember if it was on one of my previous top 50 favorite games of all time lists, and it just fell off last year, and now it's back onto the list. But nonetheless, it is back on at number 35, and that is Skulk Hollow. Skulk Hollow is a fun head-to-head style game, 1 versus 1. With the new expansion, Mall Peak, you can also play this game 2 versus 2. But essentially what this game is that one player takes on the Fox clan and has a bunch of little fox heroes that are running around the board, and the other player takes on the role of like a Goliath, or this big monster, or this big creature that they have an asymmetric win condition that they are trying to achieve. So essentially, if you are the Fox and Heroes player, you are trying to take down the behemoth before they can achieve their win condition. So it's a lot of fun playing both the Goliath or behemoth player or the Fox and Heroes, because it just feels so different and so much fun every time you play either one of them. And the different Goliaths or monsters you can play just feels super unique, and it's a lot of fun trying to run around the map and jump onto the Goliath, jump onto their leg and work your way up to its torso and to its limbs or to its arms and or its head, and trying to take down different body parts. Each limb or each body part of the Goliath has a different special ability. So if you can injure that part of the body, they can no longer use that special ability. And what really drives this game mechanisms wise is just simple card placement with your movement cards and your attack cards, but the way those cards integrate with the different actions and special abilities you can do on each of your characters is what makes this game so much fun. So that is Skulk Hollow. All right, and my number 34 game was number 32 last year, so staying strong in pretty much the same spot as it was last year. And another game that I wish we tabled more often, but there's just so many games to play. And I know I say that a lot, but honestly, any of these games on my top 50 list are just fantastic. And this game specifically here is In the Hall of the Mountain King. And what makes In the Hall of the Mountain King so enjoyable is that it's almost kind of got like a Dig Dug feel, where you are going through this cave, you're trying to excavate different areas of the cave to try to create paths. You can create these other rooms, these throne rooms, to try to get points, and you're trying to dig throughout the cave the best you can to get those points, and also, like I said, build monuments to gain points. But your opponents are doing the same thing. They're using the same board on the center of the table that they are digging different routes throughout the mountain as well to try to formulate a path that'll best suit them, and then also they're building their own monuments and structures to help give them points. So it's kind of a race and kind of a territory. You're kind of fighting over territory, but you're doing it in a way where you're digging these tunnel pieces through the mountain. And the table presence this game has is really cool as you are building out the different tunnels on the board. And what's also a lot of fun is the action selection mechanism in this game, where you've got cards that you are building out in front of you, but you're placing them in a pyramid formation on top of one another, and it's got a cascading effect. So every time you play a card, you're not only triggering that card for its action or for gathering those resources, but you're also triggering any of the cards that are touching it down below the card in a cascading effect down the pyramid. So it's cool how you're building out this pyramid structure of cards in front of you to trigger various actions and trying to combo with those actions, and they just multiply and get better and better throughout the game. And the main appeal for this game isn't really apparent on the surface, but the puzzle aspect in this, in digging these tunnels and also trying to puzzle on which cards you're playing on top of other cards to trigger that cascading effect of resources, is the fun thing that you're trying to toy with in your mind throughout the entirety of this game. So that is what I really enjoy about In the Hall of the Mountain King, is just that puzzle aspect on not only the main board, but also in the cards you're playing in front of you. Now on to my number 33 favorite game of all time. It was number 26 last year. Still staying strong. dropping out of the top 20s, but into the 30s, still a fantastic game. And just a ton of fun. Another unique thing going on with Five Tribes. Five Tribes, the unique thing in this game is it's got a Mancala style mechanism where you have a bunch of different colored meeples that start on this tiles configuration of a board. All the tiles are set up at the beginning of the game, and each one of them are random. That'll give you different abilities on each of the tiles and different resources on each of the tiles. And like I said, each tile starts off with different colored meeples, 3 meeples on them to be specific, and all you're doing on this game is trying to pick up a pile of meeples on any one of the tiles, and you are placing them orthogonally around the board, dropping off 1 meeple at a time. And whichever tile you end up with your last meeple being placed on is the tile that you are triggering for its action. You're not only triggering the tile for the action, but you're also triggering the effect of whichever color meeple you end with last, because all the different colors of meeples have different abilities associated with them. For example, if the last meeple you placed on a tile was red, you would gather all the red meeples off of that last tile, and then you'd get to do the red action, which is the assassin. And you can essentially snipe another meeple from a nearby tile. There are also yellow meeples and white meeples that allow you to gather victory points depending on the amount of yellow and white meeples you have gathered in front of you throughout the game, and then also give you purchasing powers to purchase these Djinn cards. And the Djinns have unique special abilities that'll give you a special ability that's unique from any of your opponents that'll kind of give you a leg up on the game as well. And then there are blue meeples and green meeples, and those will help you actually score the different tiles that are on the board to build these structures on the tiles to give you victory points that way. So it is another unique puzzle of a game where you're deciding which meeples you're going to pick up when, which color of meeple you want to end with on that last tile to do that specific action that's associated with that color. You're also trying to plan and not set up your opponents for having a really good turn depending on where you placed your meeples on your turn, because that can really set up your opponents to have a fantastic turn without you even expecting it. So you not only have to think about which meeples you're trying to gather up to do different actions, but you don't want to set up your opponents to have too great of a turn either. So that's a fun puzzle in this. Also, turn order is very important in this game. Obviously, the first player to go each turn has the first option at which meeples they're going to collect and place around the board. So there's a bidding mechanism in this game where you are actually bidding victory points to try to gain first place in turn order, which is fun as well. It's a lot of fun. Any game that implements having to spend victory points to actually do an action or move up in turn order is a lot of fun for me, and Five Tribes does that. Okay, and my number 32 favorite game of all time is brand new to the list and is actually a brand new game that we just picked up from Gen Con this year, and that game is Comic Hunters. Comic Hunters was a huge hit at Gen Con, just came over here to the States. I believe it is a game from Brazil, if I'm not mistaken, but we just got it here in the United States this past year, and we've been loving the heck out of it. You're trying to draft these comic books to your collection to be a part of your personal collection, and you're trying to draft them based on superhero or whether or not it was a first issue or maybe that superhero's first appearance in that issue. And you're really trying to hone in and think about which comics you are trying to gain to your collection based on these different scoring conditions. And each and every game has varying amounts of points depending on which condition you're trying to meet also. So it's just a ton of fun. The drafting mechanism is one of my favorite mechanisms of all time. I really enjoy drafting, and Comic Hunters keeps it fresh each and every round with a different way to draft these cards to your collection, and then the different thresholds of points depending on what comics you are actually hunting for throw kind of a loop and a curveball into the whole system as well. So each game of this plays and feels completely different each and every time you bring it to the table. So that is Comic Hunters. Okay, and finally rounding off the video here with the final game on my list here for today. Again, I just wanted to mention, if you haven't subscribed yet, click that subscribe button to the channel if you enjoy what you're seeing here. It really helps us out a lot. We really appreciate it. And then also a reminder to leave comments in the comment section below with some of your favorite games of all time. So this game here, my number 31, it was number 31 last year, staying in the same exact spot on the list. And yeah, one game that I don't hear talked about hardly at all anymore, and that is Rurik, Dawn of Kiev. This game, as you can probably tell by the box, is a Euro game through and through, but it's got a couple awesome things going on with the mechanisms again. I am definitely a mechanisms type of gamer, and the mechanisms in Rurik are second to none. Really enjoy it. It's essentially an action selection game paired with area control. You're trying to control these different regions on the board, and the way you're doing that is really unique. Every player has these advisor meeples. Each advisor has a different power associated with it. When I first got this game, you have to set it up putting stickers on the meeples with the numbers 1 up to 5. The higher the number, that is the strength of your advisor that you are sending to this action selection board to do your actions. The stronger the advisor, the more actions you get to do with it, but also what's really fun about placing your advisors on this action selection board is that the more powerful advisors are bumping down the weaker advisors down that column for that action. So even if you are bumped down on that action, you can still do that action. It's just that action becomes weaker and weaker the more you get bumped down. It's kind of a cat and mouse game where you are trying to hold back your more powerful advisors to do stronger actions to bump other players' advisors down on the chart, so then you get to do the more powerful action for that. Actions are everywhere from combat to moving around the map to gathering resources or collecting them off the map. Each region on the map has a different resource that you are trying to vie for control over, so that has a cool spatial element in it as well. But really enjoy the action selection mechanism with those more or less powerful advisors that you are sending to that board, and then also paired with area control. What can go wrong? If you like area control games, this is definitely a great one at that, and vying for control over those different territories just provides a lot of tension in the game. So Rurik, like I said, if you like the area control on a map and kind of fighting other soldiers and this and that, but also that puzzle of how am I going to get to those actions to actually do that and to play out the plan that I've formulated in my head, then Rurik, Dawn of Kiev is definitely the game for you. Okay, and that does it for today's list. If you haven't watched the first video in the series where I go through my games 50 up to 41, definitely check that video out. I will leave it in the links down below. And that is pretty much the video that just kicked everything off for this year. Like I said in that video, January and February of every year is the time of year that I kick off my top 50 games of all time to give you a snapshot into which games I have been playing lately and which games that are staying strong in some of the best games that I've ever played. So it gives you kind of a snapshot in time on what I still think are the best games ever. And I've played hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of board games, so this will kind of narrow it down for you and give you an idea of what different styles of games are out there and which games might be right for you, might be wrong for you, but just a fun video series to do every year. So again, if you like the content here, hit the subscribe button, leave comments below, like the video, and we will keep moving forward on more videos like this. Until next time, you all have a great day and have fun gaming.